Hi, everybody. I'm Alyce-Kay from Threshold of Hineni and the Widow Reckelhaus. And this is my mom. Mom,
Hi there.
do you
Good
want
to
to
see everybody.
introduce yourself, or should they
Yeah,
call you mom?
I'm Lyn Hanish. I'm also Alice Kay's mom, so that works.
Yeah,
And I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
very good. And if we showed our hands like they used to do in those detergent commercials, would they be able to tell which of us is the mom and which one is the daughter? I don't think so. Your hands are pretty good. Yeah, your hands are pretty good. So I don't think they could tell.
Yeah, they definitely look older than they used to.
So most people watching this have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Palmolive, that's what it was. It was Palmolive
yes,
dish
that's
detergent.
right.
Um,
Yes.
so anyway, today we're going to talk about the California Prayer Walk. And this one's a little bit different because we were both involved in this, but we were involved in kind of different ways. So we will be able to tell different stories about this prayer walk. Mom, do you want to tell what it was, first of all?
This was a prayer walk for the state of California. It was walking from mission to mission, the California missions
Mission Trail.
that were,
Mm-hmm.
yes, the mission trail. That's correct. And it was a prayer walk that many people were brought in on. It wasn't just a small 2 or 3 group, but there were 22 or 23 of us.
23. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
23 of us who were like the core team, but almost
right.
every place that we went, people from that city joined us. And I think even I think in
Exactly.
San Francisco, we had about 200 people. So there
Hmm.
were a lot of people that ended up getting involved in this in one way or another, even though there was just 23 on the core team that did the whole thing. And none of us walked the entire mission trail. Do you want to
Right.
talk about that?
Yeah, each morning we were given our assignment and what group we would be with, what group of people, and what section that we were to walk. And then we were given a driver who would meet us, drop us off, pick us up, etc.
And check on
And
us once in a while. Well,
yeah,
not your group, but the rest of us common folks. Mom, what group were you in?
we were called the power group or
Or
the
the
wow group
I think he called you the bungee group, didn't he?
and the bungee group too. Yes,
Yes, yes,
had
because
several different names.
right, because he said these 3 people, it was 3 of you, right? He said these
Yeah,
3 people will get across even if it takes a bungee cord. Because
yeah,
so he always gave
that's
them the
right.
hardest things, the places where there was just
Mhm.
a train track hanging over, a drop or something like
Or a river
the
to wade through that was flowing fast because it was
yeah.
flooding.
Yeah, I really think you guys should have been the Indiana Jones group or something like that. None of us thought of that at that time.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we need to backtrack a little bit and tell a little bit more about how this started and everything. So there were 2 leaders of it.
Yes, there was Steve Hawthorne
Hmm.
and Mike Griffiths,
Hmm.
and they came up with this idea through some circumstances that you can probably tell a little bit better.
Well, I'll tell a little bit of it, but actually, I recently ran across a video where Steve actually talks about
Yeah.
every detail of it. So I'll include that. I'll link that below because that's a
Yeah.
really cool video where he talks about it. But in general, what happened was Steve Hawthorne is really big on prayer walking, and he wrote a book called Prayer Walking. Praying on site with insight. I'll link that below too. Excellent book about prayer walking, and it's just one way to do prayer walking, but it's a way that's easy for anybody to do. It's not just about these big walks. And he and Mike were driving in California. I think they were in San Francisco, and they started having this idea of having a walk all the way up the Mission Trail, and they wanted to get the oh no, I can't remember what it was called. There is a group that did these yearly things that were really big.
Oh,
March for
yeah.
Jesus. They wanted to get March for Jesus involved, but March for Jesus, their organization felt that it would be too complicated. And I think it would have been too complicated for a big organization like that to put
Yeah.
together. So Mike and Steve decided to plan this, and they decided that it would be really cool to end on Palm Sunday in San Francisco, and that 40 days would be very appropriate because there's so many things in the Bible about 40 days. And what was really fun, Mom and I both knew that this was basically Lent, and we kind of assumed that that had something to do with Lent. I don't know, I don't think there were any Catholics on the group.
I don't think so.
And I'm Catholic now, but I wasn't then. But we vaguely knew about Lent, and we knew that that's when it was approximately. And so we thought it had something to do with it. Well, we got to the first place, the Mission San Diego, and that's where we found out that the leaders didn't know that it was about Lent, that was the time of Lent, because the priests there told us.
Yeah.
So what do you remember about the beginning, Mom?
And I remember that they put the ashes on our foreheads for each of us. So we had those ashes through the day, and as a reminder,
you're made from dust, and to dust you shall return.
right.
It was in
Yeah, that's it.
in a cross. And those
Yeah.
ashes were made from the branches, the palm branches from the year before are burned, and then they take those ashes and they do that. And the priests there explained all that to us, and they taught us a song, and they taught us how to dance to it.
And it was really cool, though,
It
the
was
time
so
we were
neat.
there. Yeah, it really was. And I was really blessed just to hear a lot of this, because I hadn't really heard a lot of that before. And
I didn't
it
know
was
any of it. Yeah.
brand new,
Yeah.
so it was nice.
Yeah, I just knew, like, my friends growing up who were Catholic, oh, I'm giving this up for Lent. That's all I knew about Lent.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, so we learned a lot. And as we left the first mission, San Diego, do you remember what we found on the ground?
No.
Okay. All right. This is one of the most exciting things to me that I love telling about is, here we're doing this march to Palm Sunday, and it just happened, one of those God incidences, that the city of San Diego had decided to trim all their palm trees that day.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so there were
Okay.
palm branches all over the ground. And here we are marching towards Palm Sunday. And so we were all able to pick up and carry palm branches that first day. It just was like a really neat procession. And I think it was just the 23
Yeah.
of us that day.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm glad you reminded me of that, because we did that at the end too. And
Right.
so this will all
Yeah.
tie together.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and talk about that, about the end. We don't have to do all this in order.
Okay.
Why do
Okay.
things in an orderly fashion, right?
Exactly.
So what
Yeah.
happened at the very end about the palm branches?
At the very end, we were walking up Dolores Avenue in San Francisco, which is the street that the mission is on.
Mhm.
And we were walking up that street. It's a big street, has palm trees all the way down. And the day before, they had trimmed the palm branches, so they were all on the ground. And again, we all picked them up and carried
Us and
them.
about 200 people. So it was a
Exactly.
huge procession of palm branches.
Yes. And it was beautiful. It was just
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it was just really, it was so cool. And it was just so neat that it was bookended that way, because that didn't happen anyplace else on the walk. It was just
No.
the very first day, which was Ash Wednesday, the first day of
Mhm.
Lent. And then it was on Palm Sunday that we had those palm branches both times. That was just amazing. So it was really cool. We saw a lot of things like that on this walk. Okay, so since we're taking everything out of order, let's go back to the very, very beginning. How did you first hear about it?
I think a friend of Dad's told me about it.
Okay.
Maybe it was um, um, Plow's brother.
Oh,
Um,
Luis Palau's brother. Oh, yeah. I
uh,
can't remember his
his
name.
Ruth's husband.
Oh,
You
Ed
know him.
Silvoso. Yeah, Ed
Ed
Silvoso.
Silvoso.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, Ed Silvoso told him about it. And so, it seemed like, an interesting thing. I wasn't sure I was really interested, but Dad wanted me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually, I talked about it. I mentioned it to you.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, I
And
want to do this. And it was just, this would be so cool with my kids. Oh my goodness,
yeah,
homeschool. Yeah, we're
yeah,
homeschooling on this thing.
exactly. So we ended up, you and your three girls and me all signed up for it, and they accepted us, and they
Uh-huh.
wanted us.
And at that
And
time, I had just the three girls, and they were 6,
yeah.
7, and 8 years old, so they were small.
Mhm.
But Steve really wanted some children on this, and he
Yeah.
wanted, people of all different races, and he just wanted it to be a real mixture and stuff. And so,
And for us,
yeah,
it was like three generations
right, yeah,
doing,
that's right. It was three
which was another
generations.
thing.
Yeah,
So
that was really cool
yeah.
too. I don't think
Mhm.
either of us had specifically, we had been prayer walking, but we weren't calling it that up to
Right.
that point, right? I
exactly.
don't think I'd ever heard that term before, but we had both been doing different forms of prayer walking because
Yeah.
our family for a few generations at least is really into prayer, and Grandpa
Mhm.
Black prayer
Very
walked all the way
much.
around his farm, and I used to go do that with him. I'm assuming you probably did at some point too, right? Did you?
I don't think so.
Oh,
Mm-mm.
okay.
No, you were privileged.
He liked me.
He did. He did. My stepdad loved Alyce-Kay. Let
Apparently
me tell
because
you.
I said yes instead of no when I was little.
That's right. Yeah, like most babies, most kids go this way when you ask them something. She always went this way. And to him, that won him over.
So he influenced me a lot. But yeah, so we did a lot of praying, and I had been teaching my kids to
Mhm.
pray about different things that we saw
Yeah.
when we walked. We did a lot of our homeschooling while we were walking. And so this was just kind of, and my oldest daughter, the first time that she walked 6 miles, she was 2 years old.
Mhm.
So, and then we did that regularly. And I think I've talked about that in another video. So, so walking was just a normal thing for us, for all of us. Mom obviously did a lot of walking.
And let me say that with Brenda too, when they were making the assignments all the time, they weren't assigning her some very heavy walking a lot of times. And she finally was upset about it. And she said, I practiced, I prepared to walk, and I want to walk. And they
Yeah.
started putting her with me a lot of times, which I thought was really neat.
Yeah, it was because we had worked on it. We had done quite a few 20-mile walks
Mhm.
to get
That's
the
right.
kids into shape and stuff. And we would sometimes sing while we were walking because that would build up your air capacity and
Mhm.
everything. So the girls
And
really
wasn't
were in good shape to walk.
absolutely, and wasn't it on your birthday that for your birthday gift, I came over and you and the three girls and me, we all walked, was it 20 or 30 miles
And
we walked?
Julie Galatro, yeah,
Okay,
it was planned to be 20 miles, but we ended up walking like an extra 5 or 6 miles, I
something
think.
like that,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah, that was
yeah,
really neat.
so,
And
uh-huh,
some of it was uphill because we went up to the reservoir, right? I think,
yes, we
yeah,
did.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and not the best weather. Because getting ready for this, because this started in February, so a lot
Right.
of our training was taking place in January, and
Mhm.
not great weather.
Yeah,
So, but that was good.
it
And
was. Mhm.
and okay, well, since we're not doing things in order, there's a reason why that ended up being very providential. Do you want to tell about that? About the
Um,
storm of the century?
oh, the storm of the century. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the middle of the walk at some point, it we had horrible storms and the flooding every place we went. You
Mhm.
would see watermarks way up on the side of homes or business buildings and such. And there
And
were
on the news,
rivers.
they were calling it the storm of the century.
Yeah, yeah, they were. And every place was flooded. There were places we couldn't get through, and there were other places. We found some ways to get through,
That's why we had the
always.
bungee team. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we had one place where we had to go through a river, had to get across this river, and it was at flood stage. And so we linked arms or held hands and walked across all together. The four of us, I believe, that were together at that time. And Steve was in that group that time
Oh,
too.
was
Steve
he? Okay.
Hawthorne. Yeah.
Yeah. So there
So,
was, with the whole storm of the century thing, this all happened in like the southern part of California. And during that period, almost every day, I think there was a period where there was like every day before we stepped outside, it was just like storming and raining. And we're like, oh gosh, can we walk through this? This is horrible. And as soon as we stepped outside, it cleared up.
mhm.
And then at the end of the day, we'd walk into a church or something, and all of a sudden, tons of rain. And it was
Yeah,
like God was just holding it back for us. And then we got to
yeah,
Atascadero and it started raining while we were walking.
yeah.
But it turns out that I think Atascadero means something like stuck in the mud. So it was very appropriate.
Yeah. And it was flooding some areas there in Paso Robles as we
Mm.
walked through, and our team had to walk through a culvert that was filled with water. And so we took off our shoes. Brenda was with us, Mike and Shari and me. And we walked through, we took pictures and everything, and then we walked through, and then later was the river further on up. So
since we're talking about the bungee team, what was the most challenging thing that you guys did, or three most challenging or something?
okay, we had a couple of mountains that we were assigned to because most of the people were not hikers, and
Yeah.
we were. And so that's why we were given the harder things, because we were hikers. And so we went over this mountain. I wish I could remember the name of it now, but it was really fun, and we got some fantastic views and everything. And then another challenging time was, and I just had it on the tip of my tongue a minute ago, and now I can't remember it. It'll come back to me in a minute, so we can go on to something else right now.
Okay.
And when it comes back, I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, there was one where you guys were climbing a mountain,
Oh, yeah.
and you guys were gone all day, and the rest of the team, we had gotten back and we were waiting for you. I think it might have been raining too. And Steve Hawthorne came and he sat me down and he said, I need to talk to you. And he made sure nobody else was around or anything. He goes, we haven't been able to find your mom. And I think it was Mike and Shari, right? We haven't been able to find
It was
Dave
actually
Hewitt.
David Hewitt and Shari and me and Mike.
Okay.
Mike was our driver that day.
Okay. Yeah. So it was you and David and Shari.
Sorry.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
he said, we haven't heard anything from them. We don't know where they are. And they were hiking this really dangerous place and everything. And I mean, I think Steve thought you guys were dead. I really do. I mean, it just the way that he presented to me anyway, it sounded like you guys were gone. And then he just said, okay, I just wanted to tell you before I tell the rest of the team, and we're going to be praying, and stuff. And so we were praying. And so then what was happening with you guys?
Okay, and that was the story I was thinking about. And so
Okay.
uh, we had gotten to a certain point where there was a fork in the road, and we chose the wrong way. So we went up to the top of a mountain, and we got up there, and there were fences, and there were radio towers and such, and we weren't supposed to be up there. And there were fences that were saying no trespassing. So and there was no place else to go. We had to turn around and go back. We
And you
realized,
don't want to say I'm trespassing because I'm prayer walking. Hello.
no, no. But we did pray for those radio towers,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember that.
and which was really interesting, because later when we moved there, which we had no idea we were going to do that, I would see those towers and think, I prayed up there for this area
Mhm.
and for those radio stations.
There was
And that was
something about
really
it
cool.
though, too. Wasn't there, like, it ended up that there was a Christian radio that was trying to get on to that and they were having some kind of
Yes,
problem or something?
yes, there was. And
Yeah.
they got on, I think shortly after that.
Yeah. And you guys had
Uh,
no idea that's what you were praying
no,
for either, which I think
absolutely
that's an
not.
important thing to know, is sometimes God will put something on your heart or put you in a situation where you pray for something and you don't really
Exactly.
even know what you're praying for.
Right. Absolutely. And that's so true. And
Now
it
you
was
had
raining the whole time we were going up.
Right. Which is part of the reason that
And
we were so scared, because
yeah,
there had been a lot of mudslides and stuff,
yeah,
and it could have been involved in a mudslide that, you wouldn't have been found for months.
yeah.
And you had made a decision at the beginning of that day between things you were going to put in your fanny pack.
And I had decided not to put my extra phone battery in there.
Right. And what did
And
you
those
bring
are
instead? You brought something else instead that was really important.
probably chocolate.
Yes. So mom decides chocolate is more important than an extra phone battery.
So my phone ran out of battery service.
And how many of you ladies would have made the exact same decision?
Yeah,
Be honest.
funny. I was talking to a lady at church today, and we were talking about the important things, how important things were to eat, and I'm not a big donut person. So they have donuts at church every Sunday, and I don't eat them most of the time. And she said, you can have it once a week. And I says, well, it's not that I, want it so much. I really don't care. I could care
Mhm.
less. I says, however, I do have my faults. I said, at home, I eat 2 teaspoons of chocolate fudge frosting every day. And she says, okay. She says, well, I'm with you. Chocolate is most important.
Yep.
So, and she did have a chocolate donut with chocolate frosting. I says, I just eat the frosting.
Yep. Yep. So you guys were up there and your battery ran out on your phone. So you had no
Yeah,
phone, no way to
yeah.
reach anybody. But you did something up there since you couldn't call for help. What'd you do?
We prayed.
I know, but you guys yelled. You
Oh,
yelled yes, they yelled a prayer. They were yelling help really loud. And did Mike hear you then or something? Mike Milligan?
he heard us. And we started walking back down, and we were still doing that every so often. And he came walking up and met us. He
Yeah,
found
okay.
us.
Yeah.
And so then we got back to the car, and we were soaking wet. And they drove us to where the team was meeting, and we, we had that opportunity to share of how God had been with us. And
Yeah.
I don't think I was ever really concerned.
Well, you knew where you were. You knew you weren't in a mudslide.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't know that. I thought you might have been
Yeah,
I thought you were at the bottom of a pile of mud.
yeah, true.
But somebody
But
also had maybe it was Dave that had one of those like solar blankets or something. Wasn't it?
oh, yeah, could be. I can't
That might have
remember.
been a different time, though. That might not have been
Yeah,
that particular thing.
so I can't remember for sure on that. Yeah,
Yeah, they walked in and we were like, when we saw them walk in, we were like half clapping and half bawling. I was
yeah,
bawling.
yeah,
And I
yeah. It
think
was
that somebody had taken my girls out when Steve announced it so that they wouldn't hear it either. So they didn't know what was going on.
right,
Because it was just
which is
it was
good.
very serious. I mean, we just really thought that we had lost them because there was no contact, and there had always been enough precautions taken to make sure, that I think Steve and Mike were very Mike Griffiths. I think that they were very safety conscious for all of us.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of, even with the bungee team, they were safety conscious.
Mhm.
And so this was just like, it was very serious. It was scary. And yeah, and I remember you were like, well, why were you guys so worried?
Yeah,
That's because you
yeah,
knew you were okay. We didn't.
right. Yeah,
And I think
yeah,
Mike
and
Milligan had been a little worried too because he couldn't call you
yeah, he
guys.
was. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was as our driver, and he couldn't find us where we were supposed to be because we had taken the wrong turn, and
Yeah.
we didn't know the area. So it was, we figured that was the way, and it wasn't.
Yeah. There was another situation. No, I can't remember the details on this, Mom, so I can't save you if you can't remember it. Something with a
Okay.
train trestle, and you weren't sure if there was a
Oh,
train coming or
yes.
something.
Right. Yeah. There was a train crossing where they were doing some work on the train trestle, and they didn't want us to go past, they didn't want us to go over it. And so we were trying to figure out another way to get around it. And there just wasn't another way that would, except it would take us way out.
Mhm.
And we couldn't do that right then. So uh, we went back to them again. We stopped and we prayed, and then we went back to them again. And just at that moment, the superintendent or supervisor, a bigger, better guy, uh, he came along and he heard, and he says, no problem. He says, so and so will take you across. So we had to be escorted
Oh,
across.
good. Okay.
And we were escorted across in between the times that the trains were supposed to be coming across there.
Right. Because
And
if you had been on the trestle at the time that the train came, either you would have been smashed or you would have to jump to your death.
right. And
Choice.
once we got over, we had just gotten
Oh,
over when
yeah.
we heard the train. And here comes Amtrak crashing through, slam dunk real fast.
Yeah.
And they were at their top speed at that point. And we had just gotten off. So God was really watching over
It
us.
wouldn't
There's
have
no
done
doubt.
any good that the supervisor was with you. They would
No.
have stopped. Yeah.
So,
So,
and that
okay.
guy had to go back across too.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So,
And you're all, here's a bungee cord. No.
yeah,
Um, so okay, so
yeah.
we've told like some of these adventures and stuff, but what was the purpose of this whole prayer walk?
Was to pray for California and to pray. We were, um, what's the word when you're making up for past sins?
Penance?
Well, it wasn't penance, but we were praying for,
Repentance?
like the Native American Indians,
Okay, so yeah, we were asking for forgiveness from them.
asking for forgiveness from them. And so that was a lot of it because there had been a lot of bad things done to them, not only where we were, but across the nation too.
Right.
But particularly where we were is what we were praying for. And so
Yeah.
we met with a lot of Indian tribes
Mm-hmm.
and or a few of them. I'm not sure
The
there was so
leaders
many.
of those and asked
Mhm.
for their forgiveness and had some
Right.
really beautiful times.
And oh yeah, we gave gifts to them sometimes, and they gave gifts to us, and
Mhm.
it was just amazing to see things happen and to experience that.
Mhm.
Um,
And things with other people too, like Seiko. We had a
oh
Japanese
yes.
woman who was part of the team. Just, oh, she was so
Mhm.
wonderful. And
Yeah.
when we were up in San Francisco, she was just remembering because we went through the parking lot of Tanforan Mall, which used to be Tanforan Race Course. And her family had been interred in World War II. Were they actually interred at Tanforan or just a similar? They were at
I
Tanforan.
think
Okay.
that was where they were, if I remember right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was
And so she
amazing.
was, yeah, so she was telling about that. And I'm gonna include a video, you guys, a link to a video below, a professional video about the prayer walk, and you'll see her talking about that and
Yeah.
talking about what she realized while she was there. And you'll see the process of praying for forgiveness for that. It was really just beautiful. We talked a lot about oh dear, I should have thought of this before I opened up my mouth and started talking. Two different kinds of sorrows.
Oh yes, godly
Wor-
sorrow and
and
worldly
worldly
sorrow.
sorrow, right? Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, and godly sorrow is um, well, worldly sorrow. Let me start with that one. Worldly sorrow is where we are moaning about the fact that, oh yes, this is horrible, but we're not visualizing the sin that has caused this
Mm-hmm.
so much. And godly sorrow sees the depth of what is happening, and our sorrow is from God, and it's Him through us praying for these circumstances and these people.
Yeah, it's godly sorrow is what breaks God's heart.
Yeah,
And worldly sorrow is what breaks my heart, kind of.
exactly.
Not led
That's
by
real
God,
quick.
but it's
Yeah,
what, what hurts me, what pains do I have that aren't the same as what breaks God's heart.
yeah.
Yeah. And that was kind of a theme throughout the whole walk. And
It
this
was.
wasn't something that was planned by the leaders. A lot of this is stuff that the Holy Spirit just brought out at various points in
Mhm.
the walk. It was really cool how that worked. Okay, so I just want to explain a couple phenomenons in my mom's house, just that nobody gets spooked. When you see the light flashing by, that's not my dad's spirit. That's just reflection
Yeah,
of somebody driving outside. And that weird sound that you're hearing is her dog snoring.
yes, that's right. Which I don't even notice. So
I'm hearing it and I'm seeing these flashes. I'm thinking, what are people thinking? so, so those things are happening.
yeah,
And just so you guys know, if this gets to be too long, I will edit it and cut it into 2 videos, so or more. So if we cut, there may not be a real convenient place. So just know that the next one will be next week if I end up doing that, or I may just decide, hey, we'll just make this a long one. And if you want to watch it over 2 weeks, you can. But anyway, so that video will be in there for you guys to watch because that's a really good video that kind of shows an overview of the whole thing. And then the video of Steve talking about how he and Mike had God kind of put this on them.
yeah.
So let's go back a little bit to San Diego. because this on our first day in San Diego, I mean, this was like, that was a huge day. We started out at the mission. We were told about Ash Wednesday and Lent. We had the crosses made on us and everything. We went out, we found the palm branches, and then there was another really important thing that happened. The university.
At the university, oh yes.
Mom's
We
going,
were,
I can't read your mind.
we, we went to the University of San Diego, and we did a lot of walking around the campus, I think, first. And then we walked, what were we walking to?
We were walking to the library. Mom, this is a quiz show. I'm just giving you hints and you have to come up with the answers.
That's right.
I'm sorry, you
And I'm
guys.
trying to remember.
I
And remember, your mother is 80 years old.
And this is not a problem with her memory. It's a problem that I'm just like saying things and expecting her to read my mind because we had this shared experience, you know. But yeah, so we were walking to the library, which was built to be shaped like a banyan tree, which is where, you know,
right.
Buddha was enlightened, was under a banyan tree. And do you remember what the path was?
And we were walking up this path, and at first we didn't realize what it was. But as we got up, I think near the top, we realized it was a serpent that we were walking on. We were treading on a serpent.
Yeah. And at first we just thought, at first it was kind of like, okay, are we just like making this up? Oh, it's like a serpent. But we went back to the beginning, and there was actually the serpent's tongue and everything. And there was a quote from Milton from Paradise Lost. And so we were actually walking on this, and the whole way that the whole thing was done was really anti-God. Not what we did, but you know, it was very like, you know, it was kind of making fun of God, making fun of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And so yeah, so then we walked up the serpent again, knowing what we were doing, knowing that we were treading on the serpent. And Steve, do you remember what we sang? What Steve had us sing?
Oh, I remember. I can't think of it now.
He said, let's not try to conquer this with man's wisdom. Let's be childlike, because Jesus said that you have to have the faith of a child. And what's the most childlike song that we can come up with? And we decided Jesus Loves Me.
Loves Me. Yeah.
So we sang Jesus Loves Me, probably all of us completely weeping, you know. Yeah. It was a very emotional day. But we're walking up the serpent, treading on the serpent, singing Jesus Loves Me. And I think that was just incredibly, incredibly powerful. And then we've also found out that there were students who walked around that library every single day praying. That was really cool.
That's neat. Yeah.
Yeah. And there were other things at the university that were spiritually very concerning. I mean, not just your normal university stuff, but stuff that was very intentionally anti-God. Yeah. It was interesting.
And this was back in 1995.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess we should give the dates to put it in perspective, especially we talk about things like the storm of the century. It really was the storm of the century, because we were almost at the end of the century, and this was like the worst storm of the whole century. It was just, well, I think actually the next year or so we had El Nino, which was even worse, but it was the worst. It was the storm of the century so far.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, and then so are there any other places on the walk that you want to talk about?
I was thinking about the area in just past Robles, where we went to the Mission San Antonio. Yeah, Mission San Antonio. And it was raining that day too. And the power team had to walk down a section where
most of us drove through that because you guys were walking it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And we
had to go through didn't we have to go through a military camp or something?
We did.
Yes.
We did. And but our part first took us on a railroad track. We walked on the railroad track basically because there wasn't too much else to walk on. There were places where we could get off if a train came. So it wasn't quite as bad as that one, but we walked down the railroad track quite a bit, and we had Brenda with us that day too, so we were really watchful for her. And then we ended up walking, we were skipped ahead to another section that was through the military base and then into the end. And our sections had taken longer. Most of the team was already at the mission. They were meeting with the missions, with the priests and the others there. And we came in dripping wet. And they were so kindly bringing blankets to people that were wet.
They put the
These big,
blankets in the dryer to warm them up for us.
yes. And then they would take our clothes while we wore those blankets
and they gave us
dry
really
them.
good soup too. I remember that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember that too.
It was
And they were
so
so
neat.
nice.
Yeah. And I don't think they were expecting us, right? I don't think they were, because we weren't really planning on,
Right.
doing more
I
than
think
just.
they knew that we were going to be coming through sometime, if I remember right, but they didn't know we were coming that day or anything. And so, but they treated us like, wow,
Yeah, the hospitality, of these priests
incredible
was,
hospitality.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were
And
just,
that hot soup was so perfect that day.
it
It
was just
just what we
wonderful.
needed.
It was wonderful.
No.
One of the things on this walk, so we had a person here who was actually with us who was mapping California, this part of California, mapping the territorial spirits. Do you want to talk about that at all, or you want me to?
Was that Lou?
No, it
No.
wasn't. It was he was going to Fuller Seminary.
Yeah, I can't think of his name.
Yeah. I can't
know.
either. Anyway, so one of the men who was going to Fuller Seminary, and he was mapping the territorial spirits, because what happens is there are some spirits who are assigned to certain places. Like in Daniel, it talks about I think it's Michael the archangel that was fighting the spirit of Babylon before he could get to Daniel. And so certain spirits, and what we were noticing was, if you looked at what had happened with the Native Americans there and what had happened with the Americans or other nationalities there, and then what was happening in present day, it was all very related in that one place. And we would see that happening over and over and over. And so there was just like these same things happening, even though you had different peoples, different cultures, you'd have these same things happening over and over. You look like you want to say something about that.
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm just
So I think one of the places that illustrated that the most was Soledad. And we had this amazing team. I mean, people who were just very, very dedicated to the Lord. And some of them were great leaders that I had no clue that they were great leaders until afterwards. I didn't know that they were anybody. I don't know about you, Mom, if you knew, but
right.
like Lou and
Right.
stuff.
I have no idea who he was.
Yeah, and he came fasting. He was at the end of a 40-day fast. So like some of the guys had to kind of like carry him, with his arms around their shoulders and stuff. And just some other really amazing people, just totally amazing people. But why was I saying this? Okay, so, and we had a pretty united team. I think there were, a couple little things here and there, but it was a pretty united team. And and so we had noticed these things about territorial spirits. And one thing that we did was every morning we would have a meeting, usually outside, unless it was during that part where it was raining. And we would stand around in a circle. And one of the cute things about this was Samantha, who was 7 years old, and she wore like the same sweater through the whole walk. And she, probably because I always wear the same clothes all the time too. But she would go around from person to person and just hug them, because we'd have these meetings standing up. We'd be standing up for an hour or two, and she'd go around from one person to the next, just hugging them, long hugs, so 5-10 minute hugs, and then she'd move on to the next person and hug them. And that was just so cool. But we were so close and everything. And then all of a sudden we got to Soledad, and Soledad had 3 priests at different times die at the altar. And then there was like there were like all these weird diseases that had gone through there, and now there's a prison there. Okay, so it's like, and Soledad means loneliness, I think, or something like that, solitude or something like that. Anyway,
something like that.
Yeah. And so we're having our team meeting, and all of a sudden, literally all hell breaks loose, because we were just fighting. I mean, it was bad. And it was not the way that the team had been.
Right.
And it was really hard. And I think that we were pretty close to just calling it quits at one point. And then
I know everybody was upset, it seemed
yeah,
like.
we were all
Yeah.
upset. And then Steve, who was the leader, he was the main leader, and then Mike was after him. Steve, this really impressed me because he knew that as a leader, he needed to be humble. And so he humbled himself and he went to each one of us individually and apologized to us for whatever he had done and asked us specifically to stay on the walk. And that didn't really mend everything, but it did turn things.
Yeah.
And so then I think where the real mending took place was not very much longer, a few days later when we were in Monterey. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So why
Yes, in
don't you go ahead and tell
Monterey.
about that?
That was where one of our team members actually lived in Monterey. And we spent a lot of time at his house, a couple of days, I think, that we were in that area. And on a Sunday, we were at his house. And I don't remember exactly how it came about, but we ended up doing a foot washing.
And I think
And
Steve
we
was the
just,
one who initiated it. Steve started washing people's feet.
yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. And so just one by one, not in any order, just as we felt led, we would come up and wash somebody's feet. And usually it was somebody we'd had a hard time with, or somebody who had really honored us in some way. Something that was really special about it. And it was just really absolutely amazing. So I think I had washed Michael and Shari's feet because they had spent so much time with me and really encouraging me, as well as we encouraged each other. Since we were three that were together constantly. So
yeah, it was just really neat. And I think that again was a demonstration of, I'm not sure that that was a demonstration of territorial spirits, but that was a demonstration of the spirits that had been nurtured in their house. He was a pastor, right? And she was also a music minister, I think. Or,
right.
yeah. So I think for two different churches even. And so there was just a lot of things that had happened in that house that, the Holy Spirit had just really worked in. So that kind of atmosphere was already set up there, without us having anything to do with that. You just walk into that spiritual atmosphere and it's there. And so it was a really, really beautiful time. And I think that it mended everything with the team.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were pretty unified again after that.
Yeah.
And the man that lived there, he was known to the team as Bunny Man, because his wife had given him a little bunny rabbit, a stuffed bunny rabbit, to take with him on the walk. She wasn't on the walk with us, and it was just to remember her by. And so he wore it in his backpack where it was poking out. You could see it all the time.
And so the kids first called him Benny Man, and then everybody else picked up on that.
Everybody knew him that way.
Yeah. And he taught us a lot of neat things. I mean, he seemed elderly to me then, but I think he was probably younger than I am now.
I know.
But like, he taught us every time that you see a penny on the road to pick it up and to say, God will never leave me nor forsake me. And that became a tradition for my family, that I had my kids do that. One time, one of my daughters found a $20 bill, and I said, you have to say it 2,000 times because there's 2,000 pennies in there. But it was just this reminder. And, and if you look up where that comes from, it's from Hebrews 13. And it's where God's talking about money. That's why it was the penny that when we pick it up, but he's talking about finances. And then he says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And then the answer to that is, what can man do to me? What can mere man do to me? So it's just a really, really powerful thing. And throughout my life at various times, God brought pennies in my path to pick up when I needed that message. So it was really neat how that there's a lot of things from the walk that I think continue to minister in our lives, throughout our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was really cool. But there was just a lot that, the girls, even though they were 6, 7, and 8 years old, I think that they understood everything really. I
Yeah.
mean, everything, even these really deep spiritual truths, people were careful to present them in a way that the girls understood. And
Yeah.
I think that was really neat. I think they were able to grow a lot from that.
I think one of the missions that I really enjoyed was San Juan Bautista. We walked into that, and that turned out to be a kind of a big meeting. We always had prayer at the missions. We
Right.
always had a time of prayer.
And we always had different people got to ring the bell.
Yes, that's right.
That was the
And
privilege
so
to be able to do that.
it really was. It was very meaningful.
Yeah.
And we walked into San Juan Bautista, and then we are into the area of the mission. And that day, a pastor was supposed to be meeting us there to pray with the team from the San Jose area. And at that time, my son Daryl and your brother was working at a church in San Jose, and he was sent to come and pray with us. So he was the one, and I had no idea he was going to be there. I don't think any of us knew that.
Right. They just said we're sending a pastor, and
yeah,
that was
so there it was. My son and her brother, and it was just a real special time for us. And that was an area we went up to. Do you remember what that mountain was called? I want to say Francisco or something.
I do not remember.
Anyway, we all went up. I think we all went up there, that mountain. Some drove and some walked, and prayed up at the top of that mountain over that area too.
Yeah, we tried to, like, if there was a place that was really high where we could see and just kind of pray over the whole area, we would do that quite often. Was San Juan Bautista where the earthquake, you could see the drop, like about 15 feet?
Yes.
Yeah, where the split of the earthquake. Because if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the California Mission Trail pretty much follows the San Andreas Fault.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
It obviously wasn't built that way on purpose, but and that's now the El Camino Real, or El Camino Real, not the El Camino Real, because that would be like saying but El Camino Real, which is like one of the main, well, it is like the main road that's not a freeway in California, and it goes that whole 800 or so miles. But yeah, so that means the King's Highway. So we were walking along the King's Highway, which was the Mission Trail. Okay, so I don't remember the details of this really well. Hopefully between the two of us we can remember. But this was something that every time we had a group of people that Steve talked about, not the stirring up thing, but the thing about the 49ers and the 76ers. Was it the
76ers? And that, which was
Junipero Serra.
1776, when that trail was not 1776.
I know that doesn't sound right.
1876.
No, it would have been the
I don't remember.
Yeah,
18. Oh, that's terrible.
So 1851 or so was when California became a state. So it would have been 17. So maybe it was 1776. That just sounds funny because
because that's
that's a big American thing too. So that's kind of weird. But it was it wasn't America at the time, and it was on the other whole side of the continent. But Father Junipero Serra, who became a real hero to us and then later was canonized, he one of the things he said was always move forward, never look back, and that kind of became a theme for us too. But yeah, so you were going to say something?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I throw in here?
Yes.
A few years later, let's see, that was 1995. And in 1999, that's when Dave and I moved to Paso Robles. And the house we were building, that was being built, it was,
Oh, Mom, we're losing you. Your sound went out. Okay, go back and say that again.
Sorry, I had a phone call coming in. I just zapped it.
Okay, so go back to what you were saying. The house that you were having built.
The house that was being built for us, we were able to, because we had bought it a long time ago, we were able to put a lot into it and decide on. And one of the things we did was we had tiles made for the kitchen backsplash. we had pictures of every mission on it, and one that had Unipacera, Father Unipacera on it, and it said, always go forward, never go back.
Yeah.
So
That tile,
was,
didn't you buy that tile at one of the
we
bookshops or
may
something?
have bought that.
I
There
think
were two or
so.
three that we had bought,
Yeah.
but we wanted them all the same style. So
You had somebody paint the rest of them or something, right?
yeah, the rest of them we had to have painted, and we were able to find an artist, a local artist that a tile guy had told us about, who did that on tiles. So
that was really
we had
cool.
that. That was just, every room in that house had a special part in our lives. And
Right.
we had a lighthouse room, which was our bedroom and bathroom, and and the kitchen and family room was the mission area.
Mm-hmm.
So that was so cool.
Yeah, that was really neat. Yeah. Yeah, and it was special. I mentioned earlier that we got to hit the bell at each place. So the girls and I got to ring the bell at Mission Santa Clara. Where did you get to?
I did it with you.
Oh,
We
you did it with
did it
us.
as a family together.
Okay, that makes
Three
sense. Of
generations.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes
We
sense.
we asked Steve if we could do that one.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because Santa Clara, that was where the kids and I lived at that. No, we were living in Los Banos, but we used to live in
Yeah,
Santa Clara. The girls
that's
had
right.
all been born in Santa Clara, those
Yeah.
three, and mom and dad, our family growing up, we
We
had lived
had
in
been
Santa
there.
Clara for a while, and we went
Yeah.
to church in Santa Clara. So Santa Clara was very, very special to all of us.
Right.
So yeah. Um, so do you have any other missions that you particularly remember or want to talk about? Or any other things that happened that you wanted to talk about?
There was something I thought of a little bit ago, but I can't think of it now. So
Okay. Well, if you come up with it, and if you come up
yeah.
with it later, we can make a separate video about it. We'll have a PS video about
Yeah.
things
Oh,
that we
coming
remember.
into San Jose. Yes.
Uh-huh. Okay, San
Yeah,
Jose.
coming into San Jose. There was as we walked into the city, coming into it, we were coming to this one intersection, and I just all of a sudden felt like I couldn't even move. I couldn't go forward. And I think because this was the area where I was from, it was hitting me really hard. And so, Gene Brooks came up and he prayed over
Gene was
that
the one who
area.
was doing the mapping.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so he came up and he prayed over that area. And then all of a sudden I felt like I could just move again. And I went. Now, I've never had an experience like that before, never since.
Mhm.
It was very real at that time. I could hardly breathe.
Yeah.
And Jean was seeing spirits that I couldn't see.
Hmm.
Um,
And I know I had some personal visions there that were, because that was my home place
yeah.
too and everything. Yeah, there was, and I think that happened quite a bit on the walk. Most of the people who were on the team were from California, not everybody, but most of the people on the team were from California. And when we were in our home places, it was like God just was like
Yeah.
working on us and stuff in all kinds of ways. Um, what about people? Are there any people that you really want to talk about in a good way,
Yeah.
not gossip, but like you talked
Yeah.
about Bob Schultz, Bunny Man. There was
Right.
also, who was the garlic guy?
Ned. No, that was
Ned.
Ned. Was it
No,
Ned?
it
Ned
was
was the younger guy, wasn't he?
no. Oh, no,
Oh,
it
maybe
was
it was Ned was the
yeah,
garlic guy.
yeah.
Yeah. Who ate garlic.
Constantly. So he had it
You
just like seeping out of his pores.
could
And
smell him coming,
yeah,
literally.
yeah, he was really healthy.
Yeah.
And the mosquitoes left him alone.
Yeah.
And he was a pastor. I'm imagining he's probably not still alive. I think he was
I
pretty
think he's
elderly
gone.
at the
Yeah. I'm
time.
pretty sure he's gone because he was
Um,
pretty old then.
he
I
was he was so cool. We would, if you asked him, what time is it? He
yeah.
would say, it's time to praise the magnificent, amazing, wonderful, blah, 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 name of God, and he was just always really happy and
Yeah.
everything. It was just really sweet.
Yeah.
It was very
It
neat.
was. He was really neat.
Yeah. And
Um,
then Mike and Shari Milligan, who were just powerful,
yeah.
prophetic prayers. Yeah, they were just
Absolutely.
amazing. And there was
Mhm.
the young guy you were thinking, I can't, his name did start with an N and I can't think of his name.
Yeah,
He's
and I can
21 years
picture
old.
him. I can
21
picture
years
him, but I
old.
can't think of
Yeah.
his name.
And I don't think
Mm,
he had been a Christian for very long. This was like his
uh-uh.
first real experience. Man, he was like baptized by fire, by being thrown into this. That
Yeah,
was, yeah, I can't remember his name. Oh, that's
mhm.
sad. Um,
Right. Uh, but
I think it's been about 30 years though, right?
it's
So
been a long time. So,
we have a good excuse.
yeah.
There was somebody else that I was going to mention though. Oh, oh, shoot. I could just remember his name a second ago. The guy with the torch from Sweden.
Oh, yes. I thought about him too. He was from Sweden or something.
Yeah, from Sweden.
Yeah, Sweden.
Uh-huh.
And yeah,
He
but
was
I
a
can't remember his
pastor.
name either.
It starts with a
Yeah.
V.
Mm. And yeah, he was real neat to have along just for what, 3 days or something
Oh
like
no, he
that.
was there for like maybe half the prayer walk, I
Oh,
think.
was he?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd
Yeah.
forgotten that.
And
Yeah.
actually, if you guys watch the official video, you'll see him. And you can tell from his accent who he is. You'll see him carrying his torch. And I
Yeah.
think David Hewitt is also in the movie carrying the torch, but you'll
Mhm.
also see him preaching at one place, just
Mhm.
briefly, just a couple sentences about what he
Right.
saw. Um,
Yeah, that's
I
cool. Yeah.
chills. Yeah. So he
Yeah.
was involved in it. What's Lou's last name?
Lou Engle.
Engel. So
He
a lot of
was
you probably know who he
incredible.
is.
Yeah.
He has IHOP, not the restaurant, but the International House of Prayer. That man is just an incredible
He was
powerhouse.
amazing. Mhm.
Yeah, just really,
And
really.
he's had since then, and he was only with us for what, about 2 weeks, I think.
I think he was there
Um,
for
two or
most.
three
He
weeks.
came a little bit late. He was fasting. He's the one who was fasting for
That's
a
right.
40-day
Hmm.
fast.
And he was with us for a period of time, and then he had to leave.
And then he came
And
back at the very end.
he's led a lot of big prayer things across the nation.
Mhm.
The Call or something, I think it was called.
Yes, yeah,
The
yeah,
Call.
yeah,
And oh, powerful prayer person,
yes.
powerful man of prayer. And we had no idea anything about him when he was on the prayer walk with us.
We went
And
to his
since
church and got a little bit of an idea. Boy,
I
this guy
guess,
is
yeah,
really okay.
yeah.
Harvest Rock,
And
I think was the name of the church.
the nights we were each assigned to private homes. They had gone through massive planning to arrange all these homes for us to stay in, because a team of 23 and you could only have a few in each home. And
Hmm.
usually Alyce-Kay and I and the three girls were put together to keep our
Hmm.
family together. Sometimes I was separated from them and put with somebody else, or maybe one of the girls was put with me someplace. But homes, the people that whose homes we stayed in were just incredible.
They were amazing.
Oh, they
Yeah.
ministered to us so beautifully and met our needs. And it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, it was really neat. We also had a saying, or Steve, I think, had a saying: if you see a bed, sleep. If you see food, eat. If you see a bench, sit. Because you never, or if you see a bathroom, use it. Because we never
Yeah,
knew when any of those things were going to be available to us. And there were a couple
that's right.
places where we didn't have places lined up ahead of time. We were just going to go to a church that I think the churches knew we were coming, but they hadn't lined it up ahead of time as far as we knew. And it was like, kind of sorting things out.
Mhm.
I think some of the men stayed one time in a church and slept on the floor at the church.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. So Virginia, who joined us partway
Yeah.
through, oh my word, she was so wonderful. She became
Mhm.
like the mother to all five of us, to all three generations in our family.
Mhm.
Um, but she took over driving my van. I had brought my van, I was walking, but
Good.
different people drove my van as one of the support vehicles. So she took over driving my van, and she especially took charge of Lois. Lois was 6 years old. We're walking through a Atascadero. It's pouring down rain. So there's rain puddles all the way. What does a 6-year-old do with rain puddles? Oh my word, she's in heaven. But Virginia would drive very slowly alongside us. And every time that there was a rain puddle, she would stop the car, jump out, grab Lois, put her in the van, go past the rain puddle, and then put Lois out until Lois got to the point where she was crying because she wanted to splash in a rain puddle.
Oh, dear.
She was just, oh man, Virginia was such a blessing. I mean, she mothered us five. I don't think she really mothered anybody else. It was us five, our family, you and me and the kids that she just like took charge of and just became the mama. And she was just,
Yeah,
it was awesome.
yeah, it really was. One time I walked with Lois so that she wanted to walk with me one day, and we were walking from um, outside of Solvang, Santa Ynez uh, mission there to La Purísima mission,
That's
which
one of my
was
favorites. Yeah,
pretty, yeah, La Purísima is my all-time favorite mission.
it is beautiful.
And so Lois and I were walking, so we got behind the rest of the ones that were walking with us. And because she wasn't a fast walker and she couldn't do it, but she really wanted to walk with me. So I did that with her that day. And I think she walked about a mile and a half, something like that. And so then I waited for a ride to come for her. I put in a call and waited for a ride to come to pick her up. And then I walked on. Well, the rest of that walk, I was trying to catch up with the rest of the team and get there
Yeah,
before, you
that's
know,
when you got clocked at 6 miles an hour.
it was, yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
don't know
was
how
cool.
long I did that for 6 miles an hour, but
That's
it was
pretty
pretty good length of
impressive.
time.
Yeah,
It
you
was
guys, most
amazing.
people, if you're walking at a good clip, it's about 3 miles an hour.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
6 miles an hour is really fast.
Oh, it's really moving.
Yeah, that was good. We also had a podiatrist for us for part of the time too, which was really nice. She was there
Yeah.
when I needed her. That was
I'd
really good.
forgotten
My
that.
my arches collapsed, and so it was
Mhm.
very helpful to have her with us. Yeah. Who else? I'm trying to think of other. I mean, there were 23 people. Oh, Fran. Okay, and the 21-year-old guy was Nick. I'm pretty sure his name
Nick.
was Nick.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you're right.
Okay. So then
Okay.
Fran.
Yeah.
Fran was a
Yeah.
Native American, and I cannot remember what tribe.
Uh,
It says it in that movie, you guys, in that video. And the video is like 20 minutes long. It's definitely worth watching. It's so cool. But yeah, so Fran, she was a Native American. So she brought in a lot of everybody on this was Christians, but from your cultural perspective and denominational perspective, I mean, we were Mennonite brethren, and then you've got these Pentecostals who are like praying
yeah.
in tongues the whole time and praying really loud too. And we're
Yeah.
like, and
That's right.
if you're wondering what prayer walking is, we have done a video called Prayer Walking for Normal People. So go back and watch that. I'll link it below, or I'll have it at the end of the video on YouTube. If you're watching this on CrowdView, I don't have the ability to do that yet there, but we'll have it linked down below about what prayer walking is. So this is more for us, like walking down memory lane rather than like explaining how to do
Right.
things.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fran Noble, that was her
Oh,
name.
okay.
Oh, she was
Yeah.
just amazing. She was so, yeah, I think everybody on the team was just really, really wonderful.
Really incredible.
And I
Yeah.
know there's going to be somebody that I'll think of afterwards. I'll go, oh, why didn't I mention them? Dave and Mary Hewitt. They were missionaries with YWAM, and they still are.
Yeah.
And they're in Malaysia now, and I think they were like in Uzbekistan or something, or Kyrgyzstan, or one of those
One of those
one of those
stands. Yeah.
stands. Yeah,
Yeah, you're
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they've gone to some really incredible places, and they
That's
were
right.
on the team. They were some of the youngest on the team.
Yeah.
They were just, yeah, they were
Incredible people.
phenomenal. Yeah, there was pretty much everybody. Pamela was
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
team.
We can't forget her.
Yeah, yeah, we talk to Pamela almost every day. She's like part of the
Yeah.
family. So Pamela, we won't forget you. Um,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so she was kind of like she's kind of a PR expert, so she kind of helped out with a lot of that stuff, I think.
Right.
Um, yeah, Steve's wife and Mike's wife, Anne,
Yeah.
came for
That's
part of the
right.
time too. Steve's wife, Barbara. I
Mhm.
walked with her in LA. That was fun.
Yeah.
And
And
I
there was
walked,
another Barbara too, wasn't there? That was from
yeah,
Sacramento
that
area.
joined us for a short time.
Oh, was it just a short
Yeah, I
time?
don't think she was
Okay.
part of the whole team. Yeah.
Okay.
I got to walk with Anne close to the end of the thing.
Uh-huh.
And Mike Griffiths has since gone on to be with the Lord. He had cancer, and it was pretty quick. He
That
was
was
he
pretty
was
hard for
That
all
was
of us.
very hard for all of us because
Mhm.
he was just so loved.
Yeah,
Um,
that was sad.
Yeah, I'm sure we're missing somebody. We should have sat here and counted so we would know who we
Yeah,
have.
right.
Because it's like everybody on that team, you guys, if you're watching this and we left you out, we are so sorry. We didn't mean to, because you are just as special as anybody that we've mentioned.
Everybody on that team was really special.
Yeah. Yeah.
One other experience I was just thinking about was walking the morning we were in Sunnyvale, and we had a big, the leadership was meeting. The rest of the team was waiting, and it was a long wait. And it was just, there was something going on, and they were really struggling with how to put the teams together. Three others and I asked them permission to do this full section from Sunnyvale to San Bruno, I think. It was a 23-mile
Yeah,
section.
that's a long section.
And we wanted permission to do that whole thing. And part of it was because we were having some discussions and such. And we had some real spiritual things that were happening for us in that group. It was Bob Bunnyman and Mike and Shari and myself. And we ended up, we did that walk, that full 23 miles, very fast, slow at the beginning and then very fast, because we had reached a breakthrough. And at that breakthrough, it just sped on from there, and it was incredible. I will never forget that. So it was a pretty great time. Amazing what God was doing.
It was just incredible to see God doing different things. Where was it that we saw the two big angels?
Oh, I remember those, but I don't remember where.
Or they were real angels, you guys, not like just statues or something. These were, and I think everybody on the team saw them.
I don't remember where we were. Was that?
I think it was someplace in the southern half of California, not Southern California, but it was, I think, but I'm not sure.
I think you're right.
And there was something that was happening. And we saw the angels, and we actually, I think, went a different way or something, because they were telling us, or something. I can't remember what it was. Gosh, that was so long ago.
I know.
Okay, how can we forget something like that? But I can't.
Something like that, yeah.
I can't remember the details, but yeah, there were just like things like that were just so amazing.
Yeah.
And I think for some people, like some of the Pentecostals, that was like daily stuff. And for those of us like Mennonite brethren, we were like,
yeah. Yeah, we had kind of a thing going too for a while where there were different actions in each of us that were very recognizable.
Oh yeah, so we were doing
one of the, all these Pentecostals that we were with were constantly going hallelujah.
Yeah.
And so I started going down the road every once in a while when somebody would say something, I'd go hallelujah. And I became known for that.
Yeah. But we also there were a couple of times where we just had nothing to do, and we were all like, okay, see if you can recognize who this is,
Charades.
And yeah, charades kind of, and it's like stirring it up. Oh yeah, that's Steve.
Yeah.
And everybody had their little thing that they were known for.
Right.
It was pretty cool.
And I think I portrayed one person. I ran across and grabbed somebody around she would have grabbed him around the legs, but I grabbed him a little bit higher. They guessed it right away. That was
Samantha.
Lois.
Oh, Samantha.
No, it was
Lois. Oh, okay.
Lois.
Yeah, Lois
so little. Across and she would tackle people.
Yeah.
And then they also did Samantha. Somebody did her as hugging.
Yeah.
And I have to say that at the first part of the time when Samantha started doing that, which was, I think, right at the beginning, she started hugging everybody. Nobody really noticed what she was doing. She just came along and she'd be hugging you, and you'd be listening or talking, and then she would move on, and you didn't really think about it. And then all of a sudden somebody realized, she's doing this every time.
And she did for the whole meeting, which was sometimes 2-3 hours. She would just go around hugging people for a long, long time.
Yeah,
It was her ministry on that.
it really was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was amazing.
It was very cool.
So,
The girls, the 6, 7, and 8 years old. Okay. Remember, you guys, they were just as much a part of the team and just as integral a part of the team as the rest of the people. They had very important roles on that.
and
And
everybody accepted that.
oh yeah. Yeah. And different people took turns walking with them. That was scary for
Yeah.
me sometimes because it was like, do I really trust this person? Are they going to watch
Yeah.
out as they walk across these streets? Are they going to
Yeah.
watch out for them? I did have one situation that wasn't so good, but that made me a little afraid after that. But yeah, somebody who didn't really know how to watch over kids, but
Right.
but God took care of them.
Mhm.
But it was neat because the girls would, and I think at one point Steve said, if you haven't walked with one of the girls, sometimes you need to walk with them and listen to them praying, because Jesus loves the prayers of children. And
Yeah.
so, learning to imitate their prayers and stuff. So
Mhm.
that was really, and they all had all 3 girls had their own style of praying too. So yeah, was there anything else? I think I've said everything that I.
Yeah. The grand finale was just so amazing. We've already touched on that,
San
but just
Francisco.
at the mission, there was a park there, and we all kind of met there, and they had a loudspeaker and everything, and
A lot of people
Steve
waiting for
and
us too, and some people who
yes,
had walked with us in different cities that came there to either walk with us in San Francisco or
exactly.
to wait for us. And you'll
Mhm.
see this on the video too. A good portion of the video is San Francisco, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all came
Um,
walking with the palm
uh,
branches, and they had this
yeah.
praise music going, and Steve talked to the group for a while, and it was just it was very emotional, of course, because it was the
Yeah.
end of this, and many of us were seeing our families for the first time in 6 weeks, and
Right.
and stuff. And
It was
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah, that was a beautiful experience there that
yeah,
day.
yeah. And I remember Steve got to ring the bell in San Francisco,
Yeah,
and
that
I
was
think
good.
everybody was crying, but you could see him. I don't know if
Mhm.
he actually cried, but
Yeah.
you could
But he was very
see,
emotional.
yeah, you could see how meaningful this was to him, because
Yeah,
this really came to fruition. And it really, as they were planning it, as he and Mike were planning it, there were times when it looked like it just wasn't possible to do
yeah.
this. And so to
And
actually
it
see this
happened.
happen, yeah, was really, really neat. Yeah. So you guys be sure to see that video. I'll have it below because
Mhm.
it's just amazing. It's a great video. And I think anybody
Yeah.
who watches it is blessed by it.
Mhm.
So is there anything else that you want to say, Mom?
I think we've covered it pretty well.
Okay. I'm sure we're going to think
Yeah.
of other things, so we may have a PS
Oh,
video.
yeah. Yeah, I'm sure.
But anyway, thank you all for joining us
Mhm.
with this. We love you. And oh, Mom, it wasn't recording. No, actually, it
Oh,
was.
that would only be some.
Anyway, yeah, thank you for joining us. I know this was not so much of an informational video as just kind of a reminiscing time and everything, but I hope that you enjoyed it. It was just a really neat experience, and I hope that it inspires some of you to do something. It doesn't have to be big. Just walk through your neighborhood and pray. If you haven't
Yeah.
watched the video about prayer walking for normal people, be sure to watch that, because we talk a lot about how you can prayer walk. And even if you can't walk, like I cannot walk right now, I do not have the ability to walk right now, but God's working on healing me. Um, but if even if you can't walk, we have tips for how you can still prayer walk
Yeah,
through your community.
absolutely.
So,
Mhm.
all right, we love you all, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, let's see if I can stop the recording.